All right, then. Like a bit more than 2 minutes, but after this we have a longer break, I guess. I have to check. Yeah, I'll probably stand here better. So who's using Copilot? Not everyone, really? Who's using any LLM tool for coding? Better question. Okay, almost everyone. Okay, cool. Claude Code? Okay. Or like any agentic coding in GitHub Copilot, anything, so you don't have to actually like apply or anything. Okay, cool. So like roughly like a third or so. So I've been sleeping on this quite a while, but I'm a long-time Cursor user, but I've really got into this during the last, essentially the last conferences from Google, Microsoft, Anthropic. They all released new models, and it turns out they're pretty good. So like way better than what I was expecting. So that's pretty much why I'm going to talk about agentic coding. So it was taking shape over the last 1 or 2 weeks or so. The talk was pretty much flushed out in like, I don't know, today. So bear with me. Yeah. So and I think the major takeaway for me personally is like code crafting, artisanal coding. Yeah, great. But that's probably not the future. So it's pretty much comparable to, you have your nice garden, you take care of your little flowers, and it's beautiful, yes. But if you want to actually get somewhere, you need machinery. And I believe that's coming, and it's coming fast. So what is Claude Code? Essentially this. So I spent pretty much the last 2.5 weeks in this terminal, more or less, and got really sucked into this way of working, and it's really, really incredible. And like from the, well, to be fair, it's like from a statement from the creator of Claude Code, right? So they're trying to sell tokens, of course. They're trying to sell their tools. So it's like take it with a grain of salt. But in one of the Q&A sessions about Claude Code, that was essentially one of his answers to the question if, like, why they didn't invest in a UI like like an IDE or anything like similar to Cursor or something like this. And the takeaway was pretty much, well, maybe investing in UI is not worth it. Because models will become much better than they are today, and they are pretty good already. So this was a statement from 2.5 weeks ago, and was like, yeah, okay, they're trying to sell stuff. But yeah, I gave it a try anyway. And well, started to use it. So I think they released Claude Code itself as a terminal tool earlier this year. I'm not exactly sure when. But it's been out in the market for like a couple of months, I believe, and it's gaining, or it has gained quite some traction. And it's not explicitly stated here, but the thing to keep in mind, it works in a terminal, but it also works in Visual Studio Code, it works in Vim, I don't know, like you can make it work in like different contexts. But I was only using it as a terminal. And so the entire point of this is really, well, give it a prompt and it will do stuff, right? So it will use tools to take actions. It will navigate your code base, trying, when you ask it, like one of the initial prompts is usually, well, how do you, or like, what is this application doing? Tell me what's the application. And this thing goes like a human, opens the README, browses through different files, and then comes back. So in contrast to, for example, Cursor, which builds up like a full index of your entire code base, it creates embeddings out of your code. That's not what they're doing, at least not primarily. So what they're doing is they're making use of prompt caching, so pretty heavily biased towards prompt caching. So which means they read up like a bunch of files and then store them in a prompt. And since mid of May, the prompt caching in Claude works for 60 minutes. Before it was only 5 minutes. And the entire point of this is the initial write to the cache is like, I don't know, like 1.5x more expensive than a usual prompt you would do, but the subsequent calls are like very, very cheaper, like 10x cheaper. So that's the entire point of this. Yeah, and well, that's pretty much, well, I think it was 2.5 weeks ago. I've done like tons of Bluesky work earlier this year. So I was playing around with this and I was like, okay, I have Claude Code. I have Bluesky. Bluesky doesn't really have any, or like you can build Bluesky UIs without any backend. You can just rely on the APIs. So it was like a pretty good candidate for just getting started. And yes, you know, I could have improved the posting form there, but that wasn't really the point. So the point was I was starting, and like a couple of hours in, I had essentially like a fully functional Bluesky UI, right? Like as a web. It's a React Router application, you know, like signing in, liking, reposting, playing videos, displaying images, doing a search, and all via prompting. I didn't write any, like a single line of code, including the deployment, right? So the deployment to Vercel was, well, to be fair, the Vercel CLI was set up already, so it was authenticated. Beyond that, deploy to Vercel, done. Including environments if you want, right? It's setting up environments in Vercel and so on and so forth. So it was actually quite nice. That was a search. So I was tracking, like, all right, so there are like two different ways of using it. You can have the Cloud AI subscription, which I come later to, but initially I was using the API because it's pay-per-use, right? So essentially pay per token. So I was able to track the actual cost. What did it cost to implement something? And this was like the ticket issue, I don't know how you call it, of, well, let's add to this basic interface of Bluesky, let's add like a search functionality. And it was like, yeah, $2 something in tokens, and took, I don't know, a couple of minutes, not sure how long it took. But you see actually here, 9:43, I don't know, I started, not sure when I started, but it wasn't long, right? So it was like a morning, like a Friday morning, I believe. And it really pretty much worked out of the gate. So so I was getting excited. Let's say it that way. The day after, I think it was the day after, so more or less by accident actually, I'm not into soccer in any way, but I was looking for, so I had this, the initial idea was actually, well, I would like to do some, I don't know, some ship posting on some live stream, essentially. That was the initial idea. So I just went to one of the Mediatheken, here from ARD or ZDF or what it was. And there was some soccer game running. It wasn't this, but something. And I was like, okay, let's just roll with that one. That was a Saturday, I think in the afternoon. And so I got working, like essentially, again, like a bit more elaborated prompt, pretty much like an RFC, if you want, right? So like build up the context of what I want to build and you know, how we could approach this. So I was doing like turns with Claude Code essentially, and then had Claude Code write down like an RFC style thing as like a basis input. Like, you know, it's more than like one sentences as a prompt. And it took a while to get this really working, since it's quite involved, right? So you subscribe to like a live stream, you have to chunk this somehow, the video, you have to submit it to some LLM, you have to do some stuff, you know, you have to analyze what's happening. And I think there's a slide, yes. The end result is essentially this. So like an application which reads in the live stream and tries to identify interesting scenes and writes up some live comments based on the input, based on the video input, and tries to select the best frame from this. I think it's 20-second chunks, and that's pretty much looks way more sophisticated than it actually is. It's like a Node.js application, interfacing to FFmpeg, which is doing the heavy lifting for the stream processing, and interfaces to Gemini, like from Google, the LLM, because it's first of all cheap, and it's also able to take in video natively. So you can just upload a video and it will give you like a transcript or whatever you want from the video. And the 20-second chunks really mostly for speed, so that you're like close to real time, right? So that it's not taking like 5 minutes until you have a comment, but close to real time. That was the reason to go with like these smaller chunks. And at this point, I was really, okay. So I posted this on maybe Bluesky and LinkedIn, and someone from some sports organization, let's call it that way, reached out, and they did a similar thing for the Bundesliga last year. Like as a full-blown team, and it's like, but essentially the same. So yeah. At that point, I was really, okay, so maybe there's something to the idea of really buying into this agentic coding. And actually, that's really roll with that idea, explore how we got there. The total cost in terms of API usage was up until this point, I think 85 euros or something is this. I did some like more experiments, but essentially 2 applications plus some more experiments was like in API usage, 85 euros, mostly with the smaller model, like Claude Sonnet, and like some tries with the bigger model, Claude Opus, which actually drove the cost quite high, right? So like Claude Opus is 7 or 8 times more expensive than Sonnet, which then actually makes the $200 a month per month for the max plan quite attractive. It sounds ridiculous. It's at first sight, it's like never. But once you're at this point, it's like, yeah, maybe, why not? Let's try this. And I think the important switch there was really to stop worrying about the cost. Before I was really monitoring, like, how much does it cost? Is it too expensive? Is it going to cost like 1,000 euros? At that point was like, whatever. It's like $200 US per month, flat rate, fair use flat rate at least. And more importantly, you get the access to the bigger model pretty much all the time. So I got creative and applied it to pretty much everything I was doing. So I'm a consulting project, so I do have like some touch points with Myrobots and Jira and like whatnot, like lots of these tools. And who has heard about MCP? Who's using MCP? Who wrote a server in MCP? Which one? Which server?
Oh, my own.
Yeah, but for which context? Which?
Chrome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good point. Chrome. Yes. So for people who are not familiar with MCP, like the Model Context Protocol, also born at Anthropic, and it's tried, like, I think initially they tried to describe it sort of like as a USB port for LLMs, so you can plug in any data source, but it's not sure if the analogy really works. But so it got tons of traction over the last couple of months, and in particular since Google and also OpenAI are supporting it. So they all bought into the protocol, which makes it like a de facto standard. Which means like whichever model context MCP server you're writing, you can plug it into your Claude desktop, your OpenAI desktop, ChatGPT desktop, whatever it is, or the web version of that, in theory at least, and give it access to your Google Calendar, your Gmail, your Miro, your Jira, whatever it is, right? So it will be able to fetch data, and more importantly, will give you access to perform actions. So I didn't do this by hand. This was prompted via Claude Code and an MCP server for Miro. Way better than I would do it. And not really faster, probably, but so the first one was this. Like, that's where I started with. Actually, I started with some internal stuff, but I can't show this. So I started with this one here. And Miro has like a sidebar, like a chat assistant essentially, where they potentially use like a shitty model from 2 years ago. And similar prompt, or like exactly the same prompt, via Claude Code with MCP is this. And with the sidebar is like 4 sticky notes, right? So it isn't even worth showing here. And then I took this and the other picture, like the other screenshot, as an input and asked it to make a board why MCP with Claude is better than the sidebar assistant, and that's essentially what it came up with. Which means pretty actually every fucking company on the planet wants to have stuff like this. It's amazing. Since it's breaking out of the dev context into pretty much any domain you can think of. And when you think about it, when you remember the early days of LLMs, where Microsoft was quoting people are using like, I don't know, like 1-2% of the capabilities of applications, like Word, Office, you know, like PowerPoint and something like this. It sort of makes sense, right? Since like the MCP protocol exposes like all the available actions with description, and the LLMs can actually make sense of this. In contrast to a human who's like used to, I don't know, like draw this here, you know, like is doing pretty much the same over and over again. And that's made me also think about my usage of IDEs or VS Code, for example. What I'm actually doing there is opening files, switching tabs, instructing some prompts. That was pretty much my only usage of IDEs. All the other crap, yes, some power users maybe, most of the people probably not. So, and when you think about this, then you're actually back to the terminal, since it's pretty much the same. In terms of, you know, like things you actually need to get work done. Oh yeah, and that was, so I did like a React Native app in between, but yeah, I spare you the details. So but with mobile development, I don't mean actual mobile development. I mean actually taking up my phone, sitting, I don't know, on the couch and building stuff, right? And it turns out that's possible since all you need is really like an SSH client. And well, then you can essentially build this website, including deployment again. So the SSH client goes to my desktop computer, which has all the tools available, is authenticated, you know, and you can open a TMAX session, and then you could even like drop the connection, come back later. Doesn't really matter. So this was, I don't know, half an hour, not really sure, right? But it was like, didn't take a day. And that's how this pretty much looks like, right? So, and the good thing is you can even talk to this thing, since like you have voice recognition, and you can just instruct it via your voice, and will do pretty much the heavy lifting by itself. And so my actual project, so I'm super excited, and that's like an actual production app now. It's like an Elixir stack, Phoenix, and this is the idea is once you have all these MCP servers, you need some way to get insights of what's happening, who's doing what, which actions are performed, audit fails, yada yada yada. And well, Erlang is pretty much made for this, right? That's essentially if there's one use case for Erlang, that's pretty much it. And yeah, Claude Code is not breaking a sweat, and it's just building stuff, including the landing page. And the interesting part there is probably it's like a growing code base, so it's not only like one shot or like multiple shots. It's actually changing, refactoring, breaking it up in different parts, running migrations, and so it's like way closer to actual daily usage in a company. And I think what really makes a difference is like this RFC-driven or GitHub issues-driven or like whatever you want to call it. So to have like context upfront, build context upfront, and I believe it's like pretty much all the best practices still apply, which were true before. Claude Code is not the only one. Goose is got some traction. It's essentially from Square, like the company from Jack Dorsey. They're also pretty deep into the MCPs, but Goose is pretty much Claude in a different shape. Sketch is from the Tailscale founder, like a similar concept, but more container-based. I haven't really tried it. And of course, Cursor, which also has an agentic mode. GitHub Copilot also has an agentic mode. But I think the actual difference, like, first of all, Claude Code, they're dogfooding this. And we get to this in a second, yes. So they dog food this tool in the entire company. Like 80% of the staff is actually using Claude Code. So not only tech, marketing, legal, design, who's actually shipping stuff to production. So rather than here's a Figma design, let's build it and fix it. And so they are really all in on the tool. So I like that. I like the vision. And with the subscription, you don't have to worry about the cost, and you get like a pretty much top-of-the-line model and I don't get any money from them, right? So I'm not on their payroll or anything, but it's, I know from my point of view at least, it's way superior to Cursor. So I canceled my Cursor subscription and just went all in here. And yeah, that's what I keep coming back to. Planning makes all the difference. There's a huge difference between like a single prompt, like a single sentence, and like some actual give it context, right? So like, and when you think about it, when you're in a company working somewhere, there's not really someone shouting over your shoulder or over the table, hey, let's build a checkout, or like let's build like an image gallery. There's usually more specific instructions, what you actually need, what you want, and then some iteration, since you probably don't get it right in the first try. It's still the same, but like, I don't know, multiple times faster. Yeah, and multiple times faster, in particular then, when you're able to find feedback loops. So which means like the browser MCP, like an MCP server, which is able to drive Puppeteer or Playwright or like one of the other browser abstraction thingies to navigate around, take screenshots, feed it back to your tool. Compiling, like compilers are pretty good feedback and pretty fast. Tests also pretty good, pretty valuable, but not as fast sometimes at least. Feedback loops are really valuable. Oh yeah, and for the documentation or like the RFC context, not only initially, but also along the way, let it write down notes, write down documentation afterwards. So you get like a lot of stuff, like a lot of documentation for free. Well, not for free, but like almost free. And yeah. So that was like a busy day, churning out some code. And the interesting part is it has like an open telemetry data which is emitted. So you can point it to some open telemetry endpoint. And Claude Code will submit some data there, including cost usage. And that day alone was like, in theory, like close to the 200 US dollars I'm paying per month, right? So if you use it daily, it's totally worth it. Yeah. So, and when you take this from the high-level view, do I want this in my organization, and not necessarily just Claude Code, essentially anything. When you think about what people on your payroll are actually costing, and I don't mean what you get in your bank account. I mean the actual cost for the company. It's, I don't know, depending on context, but I think $200 is still cheap. Really, really cheap, right? When you consider all the other costs which are not necessarily visible, that 20 people meeting for 1 hour, which you probably don't need in that case, then it pays for itself. Yeah, and what I see, what I also last week there was the AWS summit. I also talked to a bunch of other people which are also using Claude Code or similar tools, and well, they might not agree on everything, but on the smaller teams, larger scope, pretty much everyone can agree on. The everyone ships to production might be debatable and depends on context. If I would hire people, that would be my number one thing. So no one who's not shipping to production is gonna get hired. And yeah, I still think I just had the conversation today. When you look at the software landscape, which is existing, tax accountants, legal, I don't know, healthcare, all the software which is existing there is, I don't know, 20 years old, shitty, outdated, doesn't work well. There's so much software to build. So I'm not really worried about running out of work. I believe much more it's there's so much stuff to be created. So yeah. For SaaS models, at least the simple ones, I think it's pretty much a death sentence. These build my invite site, build, I don't know. So these small tools, they are just one prompt away, right? So for those kind of tools, it's difficult. For larger, more sophisticated application, probably not. But yeah, I really strongly believe the impact will be massive, really, really massive, and don't know where it's going, but it's going to be massive. And one reason I believe this is when you look at the history, and where people also every year someone is saying, well, it's plateauing, it's declining. There was this Apple paper which is making the rounds on LinkedIn. These LLMs can't reason, right? Can't really reason. Who cares, right? As long as it solves a problem, I don't care if it's really reasoning or not reasoning. That's an academic question maybe, but for actual usage, it doesn't matter at all. And I didn't make these numbers here up. There was actually a paper that's like a log scale, so it's actually exponential, the curve here, or the flat line you see is actually exponential. And so what they did there is they mapped human tasks to LLM capabilities and tracked this back for the last 6 years. And essentially what they're saying is over the last 6 years, it was doubling every 7 months in terms of task length it takes a human, right? So to do some stuff. So exponential growth. And even if it would plateau today, I wouldn't care, it would be good enough. But I'm pretty sure even if it's not continue to be exponential, it's going to be better. There's too much money to be made to just stay at this, I believe. So yeah, and there always is, it can't work. For greenfield it's great, for brownfield it's shit. I don't think that's true. Code quality. Do you really need all the bells and whistles? Probably not, right? So I think the last 10 years, 15 years, there was lots of focus on beautiful code and you can read everything and it's perfectly crafted. No one gives a shit in the end, right? As long as it works, no one really cares. In particular, if the cost of change is going down, right? Then it doesn't really matter. There was this pretty good blog post from Fly.io, like a hosting company, which is a rant for all these it can't do this, it can't do that. It's a good read, so make sure to read it. Yeah, it's good enough already. Code is liability, that's still something I believe, right? So for all the legal departments which are like hesitant to give away code into any LLM, no one cares about your shitty code base, right? It's really doesn't matter. And also this year, access to tools and like what you actually think about of doing, let it do. So think outside of just creating code. And this is really still applies, was in the early days of, at least what was when ChatGPT was, GPT 3.5 was free and 4 was not. Everyone was complaining who was using the free version, it doesn't work, it can't do this, it can't do that. Yes, it can, you just have to pay for it, right? Nothing is free. And the more you pay, potentially, the better it gets. So I really recommend try it out. I believe you can do this on the Pro subscription nowadays. So it's $20 a month with like tighter usage limits, like 1 or 2 hours per day. Where the bigger subscriptions gives you like more room for the actual usage. And yes. And again, this wouldn't have been possible 3 months ago. It became possible 2 weeks ago. And who knows what is in 3 months from now. So it's only because something didn't work 3 months, 6 months ago, doesn't mean it doesn't work today. So be curious. And that's pretty much it, yes.